U.S. President Donald Trump says he thinks a deal to end the war in Gaza might be close. Speaking outside the White House, Trump expressed optimism over a deal that would also see the release of all hostages, though the president was vague on the details. Here's what he said.
It's looking like we have a deal on Gaza, and we'll let you know. I think it's a deal that will get the hostages back. It's going to be a deal that will end the war. It's going to be a deal it's going to be peace. I think we have a deal. That'll be number 8, Peter, not the...
Let's bring in Janelle Dumalaon, who's in New York, for us. Janelle, what more do we know at this point about this deal Trump is talking about that he says will bring peace and the hostages back?
Nicole, as you just pointed out there weren't a lot of details to be had from that short gaggle that the president did with reporters before leaving the White House. But what we do know is that earlier in the week at this UN General Assembly, Trump met with the leaders of Arab and Muslim countries in order to present to them the latest U.S. plan on the future of Gaza. And this is a plan that had several parts, including a permanent ceasefire, the release of all the hostages, and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip, as well as the sending of security forces from those Arab and Muslim countries in order to help secure the region. And in turn, we're told that in this meeting, these Arab leaders told them what their red lines were. And these included no Israeli annexation of the West Bank, which Trump has vowed he would not let happen. So we know that this meeting at the UNGA took place earlier this week, and we know that President Trump is meeting Bibi Netanyahu at the White House on Monday. And his project, Trump's project, will then be to sell Bibi Netanyahu on this plan. But to say that there will be sticking points is an understatement, Nicole. We know, for example, that the U.S. plan includes having the Palestinian Authority have some involvement in the administration of a post-war Gaza. This is something that Israel does not want. Israel has also already done a lot to increase its hold over the West Bank by via these ever-expanding settlements. But what we can infer from Trump's comments is that he's confident that he will be able to get Bibi Netanyahu there. But really, we'll have to wait until Monday to see if that indeed ends up being the case.
Israel and Gaza front and center there at the UN, where you're covering the General Assembly. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the leaders assembled there. What reactions were there to his speech?
You know, we were actually wondering how this would look like. He was the very first speaker this morning. We weren't wondering whether delegates would boycott. That was pretty clear. But we didn't know if they would simply avoid going to the assembly hall until he was done speaking, or really whether they would make a point of sitting in their seats and then getting up once Netanyahu was called to the stage in order to really show Netanyahu that they were departing and that they were rejecting his remarks. It turned out to be the latter. So as soon as Netanyahu was called to the stage, dozens of delegates started streaming out, many of them from the Middle Eastern delegations, but also some from the Latin American delegations as well. But of course, Netanyahu also brought with him a very large entourage that sat in the visitors' gallery and also made sure to fill the relatively empty assembly hall with a lot of applause. Meanwhile, outside the UN, there were also protests organized. So a group of protesters started gathering at around 9 a.m. on Times Square. Then they marched towards the UN. By the time they got here, of course, Netanyahu's speech was over, but we're told that the protesters numbered around 2,000. So we know what a controversial figure Netanyahu is, and the reactions to his speech really did reflect all of that, as it did in the previous years where we also saw that pattern.
SDW's Janelle Dumalaon reporting from New York. Thank you so much, Janelle. To discuss this possible deal in further detail, I can now speak to our Middle East analyst, Shani Rozanes. First up, what do you make of this plan? What do you know about it? And could it end the war?
Well, I don't think Netanyahu is going to hear about it for the first time in the White House on Monday. There's no doubt that his close aide, Ron Dermer, has been in the knowns of what's the offer. We also know Netanyahu himself already met yesterday with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who are supposed to be very deeply involved in designing this 21 points plan. among the most important points are of course, we're talking about the release of the hostages, gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, and a ceasefire, at least not a permanent one, but a temporary long one. That's the plan. The important two other points to mention is the Arab or Muslim countries, involvement in this as the ones sending security forces into the Gaza Strip. That's one thing that is quite key in making them, key allies in this plan. That's one thing. And the second thing is the involvement of the Palestinian Authority as in some sort of capacity in managing the government in the Gaza Strip the day after. And this would be the main issue that Netanyahu would try to get Trump's ear on Monday, because as we've seen him today talk when he spoke in the UN, the Palestinian Authority for Netanyahu is a non-starter. Even the Palestinian Authority, despite the collaboration that exists on the ground today between Israeli security forces and Palestinian security forces in the West Bank. This would be not an easy pill for Netanyahu to swallow, because he's been very adamant throughout his career, but definitely since October 7th, also against any role for the Palestinian Authority. And this is where we see there's now this push and pull battle, on Trump's ear and between basically Netanyahu and his stand. And the Arab moderate countries that want to join this alliance for the Gaza in the day after, and that insists to bring the Palestinian Authority in. Yeah.
Donald Trump is widely considered to be the only person able to put an end to this war because he does have so much leverage over Benjamin Netanyahu. Is there a scenario in which he could get him to consider the plan as it stands?
Well, Netanyahu, if Trump wants Netanyahu to agree, Trump has a lot of leverage on Netanyahu, there's no doubt. There's only, as Israel stands now, maybe in its most isolated point internationally, and it's definitely in the last decades, it's find comfort in Trump and in the fact that he has also bought for the Israeli argument for a long time. He's talking about, of course, the need to remove Hamas, but also about the threat of forces, that are trying to ruin the West. He's also part of what he was giving his speech in the UN this week about. And of course, he also agrees to the fact that the release of the hostages is the most important thing. They all need to be released. So there's a lot of points where they share, agreements. But we cannot underestimate, the leverage that the Saudis and other, Gulf countries, where Trump himself was, making his visit just a few months ago, the heavy, a lot of money that is involved in that, but also we see more and more of the Arabs just swaying in and trying to put pressure on Trump to put pressure on Netanyahu. And I'm not sure how much longer he can still be the last one backing Netanyahu. Trump likes to be part of the winning coalition. And if he starts feeling the tide changing, I won't be surprised to see him also getting tougher on Israel.
Let's look at the other side of this conflict then. Why would Hamas agree to this deal?
It's a great question. You're having there. This is again why the Arab coalition here is so meaningful, because they also have the leverage. Of course, they have the financial means also to be involved in the rebuilding of Gaza after the total devastation that has happened in the last 2 years, and also political gain. One of the more important allies there, it's not Arab, but it's Muslim, it's Turkey, that Trump met with Erdogan in the White House just yesterday. They could also be a very big player here in trying to put some leverage on Hamas. So they're critical players, and they are probably the only ones who can get Hamas to step back. And this is why Trump needs them. And this is why, if we want to see a solution, we would need to find more and more countries that are willing to unite, for Gaza and for a better future for the whole region.
Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes, always great to get to your take. Thank you so much.